Jon, welcome to the Event Tech Talk Show. We are in Dubai Industrial City, correct?
Correct.
In your new warehouse?
Yes.
Just landed recently?
Yeah.
And actually inside one of your units. Is unit the right way to phrase it? How do you position the structure?
We say structures. So we've got two products, pods and structures.
Right, got you.
So
okay.
yeah, so it's really one of our structures.
So yeah, not my normal setup.
No.
But very interesting and perfect actually. We'll come on to kind of use cases a little bit later. But I'm already very comfortable. It's like we've done this before, mate. So.
Yes, almost. Yeah.
Before we get into minus 45 dB, why you're here in Dubai, I'd love to learn a bit more about kind of your journey in the events industry, where you started, what brought you to launch this business.
Yeah. So I think it's like most people, you kind of fall into events, and it's so I was at university in Leeds and doing sport and recreational development, so completely unrelated, was all about developing sport for children, etc. And one of my things I was very good at university was drinking. So probably quite synonymous with events. Yeah, absolutely. And every time I went out, I used to bring some people with me, and as that grew and grew and grew, I used to bring more people, guest lists, etc. Yeah. Before you know it, you're going out with loads of people. And that led to me basically running a student events company, which did student nights across the UK. So 15 cities, 20 nights, all big, sort of like 3,000 students in there, really like, cheap beer, Chesney Hawks, really cheesy student nights. And then I thought I was a little bit too cool for that, so started going into live music stuff. So Prodigy, Chemical Brothers, Mark Ronson, Tiesto, Paul van Dyk, all of those sort of like cultural events. And then that was a little bit, you get some interesting characters in that world, and obviously learned an awful lot about how to do business, but also how not to do business, and got burnt a few times. And then sort of moved into sort of more corporate side of things, setting up sales and marketing structures within big businesses, so large restaurant chains, large nightclub chains, etc. And then kind of got a little bit disillusioned with that whole world with regards to nightclubs, like late night, and wanted to find a way to sort of still come out of that side, but still be in events. Mm-hmm. And that's where sort of like the furniture, the supply chain, I suppose, supply chain to the event industry came in. And was working at a Thorns Group. COVID happened, saw an opportunity, purchased a company. During that whole process, started developing another product, which was minus 45 dB. And it's kind of been that journey into event supply chain, which has kind of brought us to running Thorns Group, which is a large furniture company in the UK and Europe. And then developing minus 45 off the back of that, minus 45 dB off the back of that. So it's been a bit of a journey.
If I could just dig into Thorns Group for a little bit, to be brave enough, I think most people wouldn't have bought a company that deals with or has to have in-person events happen at the time, at that moment. What was it just that you saw in that? Was it your belief in in-person events, or was it other things as well?
I just think humans, like the thought process. So I did a poll which Rishi Sunak put out and said, "Event industry's dead. You need to reskill and retrade, retrain and go back to mine." I did that, and it said I should be a cake decorator. Right. So first of all, it's like I would eat all the cake, so nobody would ever buy it. But second of all, it's like it just felt so like humans. It's about interaction, right? We're beings like we like interaction. We like to get together. So the thought for me was, I couldn't possibly imagine a world where people weren't coming together. Now, obviously, it was risk when everybody in the industry is like, it was all about hybrid, if you remember. It was all about online. It was like, this is the big shift. This is that cultural shift from in-person meetings into, no, you're never going to see another human being again. Remember all the big tech companies, you'll know better than I. Twitter, Google said, this is the end of office working. Everyone's working from home, remote, all of that stuff. So it was a big move, but I just had that. I just couldn't believe that it wasn't going to come back, and thankfully they did. The first event back from COVID that we did was British Grand Prix, so we went from nothing for 18 months, and obviously we will all know that we got hit the hardest, first to close down, last to open. Don't go out but do go out type Boris Johnson in that Christmas of 2019, all of that, so it's just that belief that naturally as humans, we want to interact, we want to be together. I just couldn't imagine a world where that didn't happen. So yeah, it was risky. It was obviously quite a lot of convincing of wife and stuff, because obviously everything went in to make it happen. But thankfully, it was kind of proven that that's what we're about. You know, everyone saw what it was like. It's just like, you know, with events like live, like it's not about being online and sitting in front of a computer. It's about this. It's about relationships. It's about getting together. And that's what it was about. So.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. Event Tech Live is an in-person event. There's hybrid elements of it because we can't have everybody in the room, unfortunately. But all of our customers are those virtual event platforms and hybrid event platforms and doing things online as well. And they themselves value in person. There's just something so unique and special about it. It's irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite ironic, you know, you mentioned Rishi Sunak mentioning those kind of words about retraining. I just wonder what all the people around him that were putting those events and press conferences on must have thought about him in that moment, because without them,
I mean,
they wouldn't have been able to do even those announcements.
Yeah, absolutely and things like that.
Right. And we kind of helped with
facilitated the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, basically all the testing and all the infrastructure at Excel that went in there and things like that. So, in terms of minus 45 dB, then what was it that brought you from Thorns Group, a really, you know, established, structured business, supplying the industry, to want to launch something totally brand new, start from the ground up, and honestly put all of that hard work in to get a new brand launched?
I suppose furniture is fantastic. Nobody likes furniture. It's really hard work.
But it is a necessity.
Absolute necessity. We are the bottom run of everything, which we accept. You know, last in, first out. It's kind of like, oh God, you know, there's so many shows where they're like, oh, I've got to deal with furniture. I'm like, yeah, I do it every day. But what was coming out of it, I've got a draping company which delivered draped theatres. And throughout my time around, everyone was speaking to me about sound. I was like, yeah, I've got draping, you know, box theatres and stuff like that. Yeah, but it's, you know, it's not really what, you know, it's not clean. It's not, doesn't offer the sound reduction. It's big, so you know you can build big spaces, but you can't do a private meeting room. And so everyone that I was speaking to, both in exhibitions and events, was talking about sound and how do we sound's an issue. And we all know, obviously, from show floors and from events that the nature of the event is that there's going to be elements of it which require a level of sound reduction. So that got me thinking. I was like, well, obviously everyone's talking to me about it. So looked around. There was nothing in the market. I couldn't find anything that I could either like buy and deliver, so I was like, well, let's create something. So started creating and said, right, well, it needs to be. I used a Venn diagram, which was speed of putting something up, cost, and sound reduction, and they were my sort of three principles that I thought were important for the product. So. Could make something which is 100 decibel reduction, it would cost an absolute fortune, and it would take you weeks and weeks and weeks to build. You could do something which is 12, 18 decibels, which is my draping company. It'd be really quick, but it wouldn't offer you the sound reduction. So it felt like I'd come on some key principles which could influence what that product was. So everyone was talking about it. So I thought, right, let's develop it. And so got to work, and version 1 was quite awful, to be honest. Like in hindsight, we thought it was the best thing in the world. Like you look at it and you go, oh my God, she's beautiful. And it's like, well, now you look at it and you go, oh my God, it's awful. But then you get developing, and sort of version 1 was a 3x3. We put some drape theatre inside it. So it wasn't like this is, you know, it's like, but it's kind of proof of concept. Each door, 250 kilos. So you've got like some bodybuilder in there trying to open the door. You're like, no, it won't be like this. It's kind of like trying to push the door open. And that's kind of what I suppose the birth of the product was really. And then started to show a couple of people what it looked like, and it felt like we were onto something. So that's where it came from. And what I like about this is furniture is very transactional, whereas this, like, I wanted something which is IP, like intellectual property led, where we can develop, grow this thing into wherever it might take us. And I really liked that about this product. And it's kind of, you know, it is like your baby, like you've grown something yourself, and it's kind of like you're always thinking about it. You're always thinking about how to develop it, how to change it, tweak it. Is it doing what it should be? All of that side of things. And I thought it's very different to furniture, obviously, but it's really exciting as well, you know, because it's almost like a startup environment, but it's not to a certain extent, because we've got this machine of Thorns Group, which is a really well-established business, which is, you know, it's a machine, you know, 200 lorry movements a week, 450 people on site a week, significant amounts of full-time staff, a proper infrastructure. So it's quite nice to be able to leverage that, to be able to support. It wouldn't be possible without that. That is like the big sister to be able to drive what minus 45 dB is.
The mother that has birthed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Minus 45.
Yeah.
So you started with version 1, which sounds to me, I've not seen version 1, but very, very different to the structure that we're sat in today. How many versions did you end up going through?
So we launched, and this is again where, and your developers and your entrepreneurs and founders of that you operate with daily will obviously be well aware of this, but I was perpetually developing. So, and we got to version 37, and I was like, look, we've just got to get something to market. So version 37 was the one that we brought to market. We're already on version 41, and we've already got versions 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 in the pipeline. So it got to version 37. It was like we could spend forever literally just developing this and speaking to people and saying, well, can it do this? Can it no? And then develop. I was like, right, let's just get to market on this version. And it was the version where I was actually comfortable that, do you know what? We're probably 90% of the way there, or 95%. And there's always stuff that it can't do. But do you know what? As a product, I think that I was ready enough to say I'm comfortable that this is where it needs to be able to deliver a solution for people. And then you realise that you've got so much stuff that you want to do to it that's just almost a start, really. So you kind of like, it's almost like the toddler phase where it's like it's starting to walk around. You're like, oh my goodness me, what have I started? So it's version 37 was the one that we brought to market in March last year, and then continuously developing from there.
Well, I think that says a lot about you and the company, because I think most people would have clearly got to version 3 or 4 and then gone to market with that. And maybe that's the reason that they wouldn't have been as successful as you've already clearly been, with the response that the market's had with the structures. And it very much feels to me like a similar process to some of the best design-led companies in the world, like Apple and Dyson and Porsche and those kind of organizations that...
Very generous, by the way. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to.
I mean, why not? Like, be that aspirational. You know, the first Porsche was probably, you know, a bag of scrap, and the first Dyson probably didn't really do a great job of hoovering up. But, you know, those are the products that we've now come to see as those premium products, because they are so well put together. Yeah. And there's probably a ton of their designs and iterations that never see the light of day. They might see the patent office. Yeah, absolutely. But they actually don't come to market because, as the leaders of those, and, you know, going to like things like Steve Jobs, he was extremely critical and analytical about how he wanted that product to look and feel. And even if you looked at the recent Apple launch this week, they've not really talked about AI or anything like that, ones and zeros and software. They've talked about product design because they want to elevate themselves to be that premium quality product. Did you take inspiration from those types of companies in your process?
Yeah, I think, and it sounds very indulgent, but I think the key bit for me is that vision. But what's really interesting about Steve Jobs and Apple as a case study will be that they were the market leader, and even the way that they framed. So they talk about framing their product. The reason why the Apple stores are the way they are is so that you frame the product, and it's not about, you know, I think the old world was stack them high, just fill it full of, but it was to give the product the air, the room to breathe. Like that vision that Steve Jobs had, it was all about the product, and it was all about innovation, and it was all about driving it forward. And it's really interesting to see, as soon as he died, like that part stopped. They lost share price. Everyone's caught them up, and now you've got people that have taken head, which you would never say would have happened with Apple. And I think it shows just how important that vision is, where a lot of people, I think, overlook that, to be honest with you, and just kind of think that it just happens, whereas it doesn't. It's guiding principles, and it's the energy that you put into it, and it's the where you want to get to, like how do you get there, and it's those bits that I think that get overlooked. And I look at different businesses all the time, and different brands and different products to sort of try and, you know, it's those 1%, isn't it? Marginal gains, like, well, can I take that element out of there? And if I listen to that, and can I implement this? And I think my team get pretty annoyed because I'm constantly sending them things about, you know, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And like, you don't like pushing yourself. And there's another business where they made their sole purpose to get back to people first, and it's kind of like, and the speed and energy that we have to operate with, because like if you go back to somebody within 24 hours, like, I don't want to hear I'll do that next week. It's like, no, I want it now, and I appreciate my level isn't probably an attainable level for everybody, but that's my expectation. And then I've got to reduce my expectations and realize that, look, this isn't everybody's life. So yeah, I do look at all of those people, and I do look at all of those products, and I look at how can we, like, what can we take from the Porsche? You mentioned about the Porsche, and that they brought a new one to market, and it was 11 brake horsepower extra, and it's kind of like, the skin people probably look at it and go, oh wow, but that's a big thing for that development, that push, that drive. So yeah, I look in all areas. It's not just business, it's like health optimization, or like everybody that I speak to, I'm kind of thinking, oh, actually, that's quite nice. We can take that and put that in here, and sort of like culture, big thing for me, like really important for me. So yeah, it's kind of
it comes back to me about just striving to do the best.
Yeah,
and I think creating that experience, right? And if you look at those companies, or we look at the aspirational elements of anybody's life, whether that be luxury travel or a luxury car or those kinds of things. And I'm not saying that is the core ethos of everybody on the planet,
of course,
but those products and things have a lasting experience, and that's what people ultimately value. And sometimes that's the comfort and convenience of something. That's how they come away from a product feeling, how they felt using or being inside that product and solution. And I think often people overlook that and think purely cost first. They look for the cheapest or fastest solution, rather than going, no, let's just hold, let's go from 36 to 37, and let's just really just tweak these before we go to market. But your head must be blown up, because like I said, I'm sure there's a big product roadmap now that everybody's giving you feedback on all the things that they can do with it.
Which we love.
Question for you though on that process.
Yeah.
Now that you've been through it, would there be anything that you would do differently, or was part of that process being successful the pain that you had to go through on that?
Yeah, I don't think every single version of that happened for a reason, and I think it's impossible to look at it and go, I wish that didn't happen, I wish that didn't happen. And obviously it's quite challenging at times, because you often get your baby called ugly to your face, sort of like regularly, and you kind of got to take it in the spirit, like it's really personal for it's kind of like, you've got to bite your tongue a bit and just take it for what it is, which is feedback, which is improving your product. So I don't think so. I think if I was to do it all again, I would probably have to take the steps, because some of it is, so for instance, some of the locking mechanisms, we tried, I would say, 5 or 6 different versions of how it fits together, ranging from overlapping into having 16 bolts per panel and ending at one manufacturer in the world that has got the locking mechanism that we have managed to modify to allow like tolerances. No, I don't think you can get to that end point without going through that journey. And as painful as it is, I think you learn from each one of those. And I think the key bit for me were the guiding principles, to understand that if it didn't sit within, if it's not going to reduce cost, not just for us, but the end client, because it's not a cheap product, and obviously budgets are important. If it's not going to do that, if it's not going to increase the speed of putting it up or taking it down, and if it's not going to improve the performance, then we don't worry about it. And it's kind of like pushed to one side. It's not about ego, it's about the product. So there's loads of stuff that I probably wanted to do, but it was just to make it look a bit nicer, or it would probably make it worse if we had implemented stuff like that. So no, I don't think I would. I mean, obviously it's painful, like any development of anything, and you go through so much, like, oh, that doesn't work, and like headaches of how to make it all work. But I think maybe it's a bit like the Catholics that like slam themselves. Maybe it's just a bit of that, but I think you've got to go through it a bit really to get to the other side.
I think that's just entrepreneurs and founders through and through, right? Yeah. We are, of anybody, probably the most critical of ourselves and the processes 100%. And the business and the products and the brand and how people perceive us, and like you say, take that feedback sometimes personally because you have bled into something. But I've learned for a long time that you only start to pay attention to feedback once you hear it from more than 3 people. Because the first time you hear it, it's probably just somebody's opinion. They like a darker shade of black or something like that, and you're kind of like, okay, right, fair enough, move on. The name minus 45 dB, was that something that was from the inception, or did that come out as part of that process that you ended up then, this is representative of what we can achieve with the brand?
Yeah, it was what I wanted. So there was a whole host. We did a few sessions about what does a name, what can it be, what does, like hush rooms and things like that. And it just, none of it sort of like resonated with me. And so we started with, it felt like, I think it started at minus 30 or something like that. And it was kind of like, as we developed it, it kind of, we've got a little bit more there. And we've got, and then it ended up being this. So it was kind of that through the product. I mean, it probably started at minus 12 with a Drake Theatre. It's like, sounds a bit naff, to be honest, minus 12 dB. So yeah, through that process of development and tweaking and changing, it kind of elevated what was available. And we do say, I mean, it's worth saying, we do say up to minus 45 dB because you can't control environment, as we know. These are exhibition environments. And if you went to a big show where they're playing a band, they set a band up next to you, and the attenuation report that we've got, we did around an exhibition floor so we could understand what the sound on the exhibition floor was. If they put a band next to you, obviously, yes, it's going to reduce your sound, but it might be, if it's in a temporary structure, it might be coming under the floor or whatever. So we didn't, that's the number. It's up to, just so somebody, there's always going to be that one person that stands there with a decibel when you go, well, it's 44, mate. And it's like, okay, cool. So it kind of developed through the process of developing the product. And I think it's got quite a nice ring to it. But I would say that was I came up with it. So
maybe in the future you'll have to have a reband of minus 100.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's got a really good ring to it, and very rare do you see somebody brave enough. I know obviously the meaning of it, and hopefully most people in the industry will understand minus 45 in decibels and things like that, and what it means from a sound perspective. But very rare do you get somebody that will go with such a stark branding strategy in terms of, just even things like domain names and logos and that kind of stuff. Was also, just for my information, was it must have been very intentional of being a separate brand to Thorns, and what was the kind of ethos behind that?
So ultimately, I wanted it to stand on its own 2 feet, and I think that it was obviously quite a big decision because there's legacy in Thorns Group, 75 years of operating. I would like to say a well-renowned business within the event industry to deliver at a level, delivering some of the biggest events in the world, operating with the biggest exhibition organisers in the world. So part of you would say, we'll just fold it into that and do it as a sort of an ancillary sort of side part to that. But I didn't think that gave minus 45 dB the space to breathe, where it then is folded into another company as opposed to standing by on its own 2 feet. To be like, we've got patent granted in the UK, got patent pending in UAE, Saudi, Europe, and the States. So that for me feels like you need to give it what it is. Thorns Group is seen as a furniture company because it's a furniture company. This isn't a furniture company. This is a temporary modular structure, sustainable structure company. So it felt like we had to separate it and to give it its own identity, because it is something that's completely different, albeit the engine that drives it to a certain extent, so the logistics and some of the warehousing, although we're not in that anymore back in the UK and Europe, that was the initial engine that drove it, but it was always going to grow its own legs and sit and be its own thing. So it's a completely legal entity by itself. We've got obviously various different legal entities around the world, all under the minus 45 dB brand. But I think it felt like it needed it, as opposed to being just another product that Thorns offered. And I think it warranted it. So it needed to be separate.
I think it was a very wise choice, because anything new like this, when you're creating a space, you're creating something brand new for a market, you're innovating within a market, even though the Thorns Group's so credible, so well-founded, so structured, and such a big, robust business, I think it would have got lost.
I agree. Yeah. And also the brand identities are very different, and it's the innovation. You know, if I was to come out of Thorns Group, it's like, oh, it's just Thorns Group. Whereas it's harder to do this because, in all intents and purposes, everybody else, we're a startup. So I was very cognizant of the fact that I don't want people to think this is just me in my bedroom going, yeah, we can do this. So it's kind of like how could we leverage that Thorns Group name without, you know, because there's a chance that you taint Thorns Group as well. Because if this doesn't work, it's kind of like, well, you know, that's Thorns Group. So there's obviously risk back this way as well as inherent risk in -45 dB. So that whole process was a really thought out process. And how do we position it, and how do we come to market? And I had an opportunity. There's a bit of legacy. 75 years in Thorns Group. In -45 dB, I wasn't shackled by that. So I could give it, like, everything that you see around -45 dB is my vision. There's no legacy in there where we've got to bring elements of this through because et cetera, et cetera. It's literally like from everything that goes out on social media, everything that goes online, everything, all the videographers, the number of videographers that we've gone through to get that right look and feel, to the black and shades of grey, every single element into the way that this looks, the way that like, all of it is like brain dump. Yeah. And obviously it's not all me, and we've got a wonderful team, but that vision comes from me. So it had to stand by itself.
Yeah, again, I think so many people go, that's the Achilles heel in new launches sometimes, is it comes with the technical debt or of the existing business. Yes. And in the legacy of that, and it doesn't give them a clean slate to start and go, right, what does this brand represent? And not even have like -45 dB by Thorns Group.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that, you know what I mean? And it was a big decision. It's harder to do it that way. It is really harder, but I had to look at it and say, because even when you start looking at the structure, the internal structure of the company, it's completely different. Because furniture, I've got account managers where they can come in and they can, I need X, Y, and Z. That's put onto a system, and then it goes through the whole operational system. It's not like that with this business, because that journey from brief through to delivery is very different. So you've got to have obviously a sales function, of course, but then that goes into a production function. Then it goes into an account management or pre-production function. Then it goes into a operational delivery function. Then it goes into operational delivery. Like those central, and then you've got the management of that process is over a number of months/years. So you've got to have consistent account management through it. It's not like furniture, which is a lot more transactional. So even the internal structure had to be, like, we have to think about what that looks like, because I don't want an organizer coming to me saying, right, I want 50 meeting rooms. Like within Thorns Group, it's not structured that way. So we haven't got those elements because there's no requirement for it. Whereas on this, it's like that project management piece from start through to finish to give the confidence. So that is another reason to sort of, right, we need to separate this. Otherwise, you're trying to make this fit into this, and they're two different things. And so it's kind of like it all started to add up to sort of curating what it looked like moving forward.
You kind of had a nice segue there into kind of the use cases. My first experience of your structures was at NHS Confed this year, which is run by Nick Westerman. And Nick's done a fantastic job of maximising every inch of Manchester Central. He was telling me on site that one of the benefits of bringing you guys in was be able to keep people within the event on the show floor, but give them access in a comfortable way to that content that they paid a lot of money to access and be there without having to rely on things like headphones or that draping and things like that we mentioned and stuff like that. And also, I think, elevate the feel of it to a premium level, which again is something that he's striving for with that brand. And I think those attendees are discerning attendees and they expect. But what other use cases are you seeing organisers, agencies, brands, etc., use the solutions for?
It's really diverse. I look at things as like agencies and exhibitions, because they're two very different things. Within the exhibition space, what I loved about NHS Confed was Nick was the first person to take a leap of faith, really. His first meeting with us was hilarious. We were in a temporary warehouse. I think he thought he was about to get mugged, because he comes into this dark, dingy warehouse. He's like, oh my God, what's going on here? And we had a bit of a joke about it afterwards. But what I loved about his solution was that Exchange Hall in Manchester Central, 4 breakout rooms, keynote theatre, does exactly what he needed to do. He's utilised that exchange hall to do 4 breakout rooms within that space whilst the keynote theatre was going on. So that perfect example of how to use it. So exhibition-wise, it's we've got pods and structures, and they're used in very different ways. So exhibitions used for breakout rooms, so for content, keynote theatres, for individual meeting rooms, for sponsored meeting rooms, so banker meeting rooms, so people like commercial team can sell sponsorship and sell that space. The pod side of things is, again, in that exhibition space, is either to give added value to organisers or to attendees rather, because of the way that the event space has changed, I think, since COVID, and that whole hybrid model and not having to be in the office has created different work patterns. And you used to go to an event and you turned up for 1, 2, 3 days, and that was your focus, and that was it. Then you pick up your emails afterwards, go back and deal with what you need to deal with. Since COVID and everybody being so accessible online, what we've seen is that people are just basically shoehorning meetings. You're working all the time in meetings, so no matter where you are, you just nip out, right, yeah, do a quick meeting. Like that used to be a face-to-face. You never had, it was always programmed. It didn't just drop in. So people are now coming to events and they need spaces to go and work and take that call or take that, Zoom, Teams, whatever you might call, Google Meet. So organisers are now having to shift their focus and offer this and say, look, this is a solution for you to be able to do it. Whether that's at their buck or somebody else's as sponsors, like we sponsor them and cover the costs, etc. But that's one element. You've then got the pods where they can get built into stands. So stand builders can use them. They can be sponsored, so you can put a solution in. There's a few of the organisers done really well, which is monetize, like commercialise it and say, instead of taking a stand or in addition to a stand, some pre-arranged meetings, charge it by the hour. They order a bank of 10 of these meeting pods and they just turn it overnight, all day, every day. I mean, they're full all the time.
So they are essentially not just dedicated to one company, but then maybe that company can book them out for a day or for a period of time.
Yeah, right. So you can go, right, I want to book for 5 hours, and then they have their pre-arranged meetings there so that they're organising in the show. And because they're brandable and we can turn the branding overnight, so you might have Google one day, Salesforce the next day, whoever the next day. So like real good opportunities for, first of all, to service clients. Second of all, for commercial teams to create revenue streams within exhibitions, which is what it's all about, and helps the bottom line. And then on the event side of things, it's that more experiential thing. So it's around immersive rooms. It's around, again, meeting rooms that happen within like events. So as opposed, because that all stuff still happens, there's still meetings happening at the golf, there's still meetings happening at the air shows, there's still meetings, like all of that stuff's happening there. But there's also areas that they want to, it's more bespoke. So there's a bit of a fit out to it. It doesn't look like a meeting room. It might look like a block of Lego or whatever it might be. So there's so many cases that, and once agencies get hold of it, they love it because the sound is just taken as a prerequisite. Oh, cool, that's taken care of. And then it's what you can do with it. And they can just turn it into these amazing spaces. So. And
you also mentioned maybe some outdoor stuff as well on the horizon, yeah?
Yeah, so we will be, it's easier out in the UAE and GCC than it is in the UK because of the weather.
Yeah.
But we're doing our first outdoor event this year in GCC. And we have an outdoor product. It just comes to this, that development, we've got all of this stuff and it's kind of like, it's trying to create that focus around, like I could bring so much to market and lose a huge amount of money, and everyone just go, oh, how amazing is that? And just like make no money. So it's trying to focus that about, right, let's get this product, let's get it synonymous with the event and exhibition industry. And I think it will be ubiquitous across the industry soon. I think it will be the expectation as opposed to the anomaly in due course. That might take 5 years, 10 years, but I think it seems like that's a trend that's coming through, which is this is the expectation, this is what we want. But yeah, we've got an outdoor product that we're just waiting for. We've got all the structural calcs done for UAE. It's more onerous in Europe with regards to snow loading and all that side of things. But some of the big global events that we're quoting on have a requirement for it. So you're talking biggest events in the world type stuff.
It seems to me it solves so many issues, keeping people on the show floor, not just from attendees but exhibitors, providing flexible solutions for people, providing events that have maybe sensitive delegates or sensitive content at them there, giving spaces to create content. Everybody wants a space. And again, maybe that's another revenue opportunity, right? If you want to use that space to do your own interviews, filming, do a podcast, here's that space. This is what it costs you. Yeah, it's not necessarily cheap, but it's a damn sight less than you trying to do it yourself. And we've got all the audience and all the people. You could probably create 12 months content on the show floor from it in a few hours kind of thing. And then outdoors, and it's just, I guess it's endless.
The podcast rooms and the recording studios are really, really popular. And I think what's interesting is trying to get, and look, this will take time. Obviously, I've known this for 7 years, so I'm like, God, you can't see it. So it's like frustrating for me, but you know, people see this for the first time, and you've got to remind yourself that it's the first time they're seeing it. You know, they've got to have a bit of time to see what it can and can't do. But I've been talking about it for 7 years, so of course for me it feels more. But that is trying to get them to think, like that content piece is a really interesting one, because it's a one cost now, and you can seed it for the rest of the year. So podcast rooms, also interestingly, I'm really keen to deliver a competitive neurodiverse solution, because that is a trend, particularly in Europe and the UK, where neurodiversity is obviously being taken more seriously. There's a bit of virtue signalling in there to a certain extent. I think you can't get away from that. But there's a solution for that as well. Prayer rooms out in GCC, again, is another potential, so to give a good solution.
Mother and babies and things like that.
Absolutely, So as soon as you start digging into it, it becomes quite broad.
Can you have one for me on the show floor, so I've got somewhere to go and scream?
Absolutely,
That'd be amazing.
The whole ops team.
The ops scream room would be like the hot potato of the product. You mentioned you're in so many regions, and obviously coming out to, you've planted the flag in the ground here out in Dubai and the UAE. Again, I'm sure to allow people to come and physically see the product, and I guess still instill confidence that you're not just in and out, you're here to stay and things like that. You mentioned other locations as well, and I'm assuming that's looking at things like partnerships as well, because with the US market being so vast, logistics is a whole business, again, back to this world from Thorns Group and stuff like that. What is it you're going to be looking at in partners in those other regions that are going to help you be confident and trust them with the brand that you've so lovingly put tears into?
It's a real challenge. I've been having various conversations with various people globally about that, and for me, the culture piece is absolutely culture for me is huge, because I think that you can employ somebody that knows what they're doing, but if they haven't got the right culture, we're trying to build something here. We're trying to build a business, and that culture piece is really important for me. So obviously our cultures would need to align with whoever our partners are, and that's obviously quite challenging when you've got some very big players that have got huge, unlimited funds potentially, but that's a challenge, isn't it? Where it's got, how do you navigate that minefield of what that scaling piece looks like, and also how do you protect yourself, because we're small, we're tiny. It's kind of like we've got patents, you've got to enforce them. That's a challenge. We've got relationships, we've got all of this stuff. How do you grow? You've got to take risk at some times. And I want to protect everything. Like the reason I've spent huge amounts of money protecting it. But at some point you've got to let go a little bit, and what does that compromise look like? And it's a real challenge. It's going to be interesting to see how all the conversation we're having develop across different regions globally, because then you're starting getting into macro politics around how businesses interact with each other as well. So you start getting into political conversations about how one business interacts with another business, and it's kind of like, well, and can I get, is it under minus 45 dB or is it under somebody else, and how do all of that stuff. So I don't know how any of that will go. It's going to be quite interesting to see.
Well, I guess that's a nice segue into my next question, which is, what do you think minus 45 dB looks like in the next 5 years? And maybe some of that will become apparent. I don't know. Maybe you've even been snapped up by one of the big GCs or something like that, and you're sat on a beach somewhere, maybe even in
Sounds Dubai.
But that aside, what do you envisage? Because like you said already, you've been into this now 7 years. I'm not going to think for a second that you've not thought about what the next 5 or 10 years could look like for the company, for the brand.
I think that, so my aspiration for this business is I want to be the sole solution. Like we're creating, I'm not naive enough to think that we're creating a space here. So I want to be able to say that we are appointed as your sound reduce specialists. So if you've got a requirement or your challenges around sound, then we can deliver a whole host of suite of options to be able to reduce sound on the show floor in a really nice, creative, premium way. Now, that will inherently create competition, which is cool. I mean, that's absolutely fine. It actually, I think, will drive it forward. So we're open to competition, which is fantastic. There's also competition out there already. I mean, we're not the only ones doing this. I think we are the only ones that create the level of sound reduction that we have in the way that we do. But there are other fantastic solutions out there if you want to create spaces which mitigate sound or white noise or whatever it might be. There's other solutions out there. And they're all doing fantastic, which is great. I welcome competition. I think it drives business forward. It keeps you on your toes. What does it look like? I see this as a global company. I don't see this as sticking to like UK, Europe, and Middle East. We launch in the US back end of this year, already taking briefs for US for next year, completely different ball game. But the conversation I'm having globally, you're talking China, KSA, Qatar, Brazil, Argentina, like everywhere in the world. It sounds a bit dramatic, but we're getting quotes from everywhere. So how does that look like? Well, I don't know, but it's going to involve partners for sure. It's going to involve collaboration for sure. It's the only way, I think, to take a business that we are to the masses. And if that's the aspiration of the business, then we have to get into those regions. And the only way to do that is via partnerships. So there's no way I'm going to have 44 warehouses in the States. There's other people that have got 44 warehouses in the States that might like this as a product. There's other people that operate in KSA. It might be that they're the people that you sort of, so long as the commercials work for both parties and you can get across all the IP challenges and all that stuff. And brand identity, for me, is a big thing. It's like, I'm also aware I've got to compromise on stuff. So it might not be under a Balance 45 dB banner. I don't know.
I think that would be a mistake on the partners side, because I think already it's such a strong brand that, in the future, although they may choose or push for it to be under their own brand, the minus 45 dB would be such a strong brand. It would almost potentially compete against it. So
it's like leverage. Well, are you that? Oh no, we use minus 45 dB. It's like, well, no, this is it. Well, why isn't it branded?
The brand trust then has been built up and things like that, and they can't. They have to go back and
I think that first to market advantage, which is what we're looking at, which is trying to create that brand, strong brand identity, so that it is synonymous with sound reduction, that we are first to market, that we are the market leaders. There's 1,000,001 like Hoovers that you can get. Well, Hoover's a brand. There's vacuum cleaners that you can get, but you want a Dyson. Or interesting, Shark has come into the market now and is like getting market share. So it's kind of like, hopefully they see the value in the brand that we're building. And
and again, I think you're doing the same strategy as many of those other successful brands. They have not themselves immediately deployed a team to build everything up from the ground up. Lots of them work regionally with partners, with established distributors or companies already working in the market with the relationships and things like that, because that speeds everything up. And, again, every industry comes back to an element of relationships and trust, right? So better for you to leverage their relationships and trust and take a slice of it than have to invest and build. And that could, take 10 years? Kind of thing?
100%. 100%.
You mentioned earlier that you feel that your solutions will become synonymous in the events industry. Do you think that's the expectation of the organizer and the agencies, or do you actually think that'll also be the attendees?
I think that the organisers want this. I think that it will start with venues organisers putting it on the show floor, which they're doing. But I think that the attendees don't want to be, on a whole, bombarded. That they need spaces to be able to. And when you say attendee, they don't want to be in 100 decibels for 3 days. They just don't want it. So I think the attendees will start. well, we're seeing it already. They're starting to demand that they need spaces to decompress and like step out of it to be able to come back into it. I also think that the organisers, not they'll be forced, because of course they won't be forced, but they should. I look at this as like an NPS score as well. So it's kind of like the attendees. Like if organisers aren't offering what the attendees want, then the attendees will stop coming, and therefore the organisers will lose the business. So there's so many examples where, as soon as you know better than me, as soon as you lose them from the show floor, as soon as they step off that show floor to go to a meeting, it's that opportunity to break and go, oh, I'll just jump on the train and leave, or get distracted and go, oh, I'll just do some work, and then, oh, is that the time? Right, I'm going to, oh. As soon as you give that opportunity to do it, then it's gone.
Yep.
And the attendees are demanding it. So they need these spaces, because that agency that's got a pitch, that client doesn't care whether you're at your show, you know, one of the organisers, they don't care. They want that, and the team that is developing that brief has to do it, or the client in a tech company needs to have their information, so they'll just leave.
Yeah.
So I think it's coming from all angles, where everyone's acknowledging that there's a challenge around sound, and here's an opportunity to reduce that. And yes, it's not for everybody. Like, we don't shy away from that. Just like I'm sure Porsche, Ferrari, whatever, shy away from. Yeah, of course you can have it, but we don't shy away from that. But there are very specific case points where you go, this is a perfect solution, and it's a perfect solution for an awful lot of things. The challenge is budget, and the challenge for exhibition organisers is budget, which is why that commercial conversation for me is really important. So how do we get the knowledge into the commercial team to how to generate revenue out of this, and not see it as of course it's a cost of P&L, but it doesn't have to be a negative cost of the P&L. It can be contributing as a sales line to the P&L. And they're the conversations I enjoy having. So we've had some really good conversations this week about strategic relationships, about how does that commercial aspect look, because we're flexible. Yeah. So if we can look at this and go, right, we've got a portfolio of 10 events and we need this number here and this number here and this, of course we can work on price. But when it's like, well, we've got one room, well, you can't get away from that because some direct costs, which you can't get away from. So those commercial conversations will inevitably drive the conversation and where we operate. But I think it comes back to attendees requiring it, organisers, they wouldn't be speaking to us about it if there wasn't a drive from somewhere. Because content, there's people who are spending 1,500 quid for a ticket, and there's other people that will get it for free and just look over a wall and can see all the content. It's like, so it's coming from the attendees as well. They're like, I've spent 1,500 quid for this, and this guy here is just looking over the wall and getting what I pay. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like, yeah, so I think it's coming from all angles.
Well, I have to congratulate you. You know, this show is all about technology and innovation, and I do genuinely think this is probably one of the most innovative solutions of putting things together and going through that iteration to solve real challenges on the show floor and provide value to the brands, the exhibitors, the sponsors, the attendees, the organisers themselves, solving multiple challenges. You know, and I can see the appetite for it from that one introduction I made this week. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody respond so quickly to, yes, we have that challenge, please, let's speak, kind of thing. Yeah. I do agree with you. I think you'll become synonymous brand within the events industry. For anybody that wants to see or experience one of the structures themselves, where are you going to be over the next few months? I think you're going to IMEX Vegas, correct?
Yeah. So UK, we are at a whole host of shows which we can share directly if people inquire. We're at IMEX Vegas, I think it's 7th, 8th of October. We've got permanent warehousing in UAE. So if you are GCC region and flying through Dubai, which is highly likely, then we have permanent structures here where people can come and see it. We are constantly at shows, either supplying them directly, and if we're able to, we can get people in. We've got warehousing in the UK where we can do test builds, etc. So
awesome. Well, thank you very much, Jon, for coming on.
Pleasure.
Look forward to seeing the journey ahead of -45 dB.
Brilliant. Thanks.